We are going to make a little demonstration here of what it's like for us to bottle. It's one of the most challenging things that winemakers ever have to do, maybe even more complex than crush.
Oh yeah,
Because
definitely.
if you spill a few grapes on the ground, oh well, it happens. Or if the harvest date is pushed off, or all kinds of things can happen during crush, but none of them are total deal breakers. Whereas one false move anywhere along the line when you're bottling and the whole house of cards collapses.
Oh yeah.
So why don't you share your
Did
screen?
we start where it begins with bottling, or how would you like to?
No, let's go all the way back.
Okay.
Let's just say we have a new product, like we're talking about this PV Malbec Meritage we're going to call Unicorn.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so why don't you show them the sheet that we use to capture all of the things we have to do, and then we'll talk about them one at a time.
This one, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
So would you like to talk them through this? What's the first thing that you would do?
First thing I would do is confirm what we're bottling for this upcoming bottling.
This is before that, like with Unicorn.
Come up with a label text and send to TTB.
Yeah, now let's go over that. So what we're trying to do is get a COLA, which is a certificate of label approval. To get a COLA, we have to get the label laid out exactly as it will appear on the bottle. So that means that you have to harass me to write a back label text, and then we have to agree on what's going to be on the label, and we need to know the alcohol content.
Yes.
So then what do we do?
So I guess before even submitting the COLA, we come up with the back label text and the design and vintage, varietal, send it to Paragon Labels and ask them to create a JPEG of the artwork of the front label and the back label. Once that's returned, that especially if it's a label that's used prior, ensure that the alcohol is correct. So we'd request alcohol from Grant Springs. However, since they use the FOSS and we don't like the FOSS because it's not correct, we send it to ETS and wait the day. The alcohol content on the label of the JPEG that is sent to us from Paragon is not correct. And we tell Karen from Paragon Labels. Once everything is correct with the JPEG, I email Jacob and Terry and Micah at Diamond Springs at the moment, since we don't have our own BW, for the label to send to TTB. And then we wait the allotted amount, which usually takes anywhere from about a week to 3 to 4 weeks tops.
Yeah.
For the COLA to either be returned as accepted or rejected. If everything has been accepted, then we're happy. We can go ahead and send.
What if it's not?
Well, if it's not, then we have to figure out why. And TTB isn't always on top of telling you why. They will tell you one thing that is wrong with the COLA, but if numerous things that are incorrect to TTB standards, they only tell you one at a time. So you have to fix that, whether it might be saying that your wine is a port, which we can't use port anymore as a word on the label. Or
we used to talk about mineral energy, and they said that implied that the wine had intoxicating properties, which of course it does, but you're not supposed to say that on the label. So it's very arbitrary.
Yes. And it's kind of hit or miss what you can say with TTB. I mean, they obviously have a post of like, here are things you can say that need to be on the bottle per the requirements. They don't always tell you how to word things. So it's kind of a hit or miss. Like we can send something in and maybe for whatever reason, even if it's not accepted, it gets accepted because someone was just like, forget this, I'm over today of TTB stuff. Or they send again a response of your submission was denied because there was no appellation, like whatever their excuse is for denying the application, then it's another coming up with a different term of a word or fixing the label.
Getting a new JPEG and
Getting
sending
in, yeah. So it's coming up with a different back label or front label, depending on what was rejected. Getting a new JPEG, so sending that new JPEG to Paragon label again and requesting this and this be changed with the new JPEG, and then taking that new JPEG, emailing it to Granite Springs right now for them to submit to TTV, and then again waiting another 1 to 4 weeks for an acceptance or denial, depending on what's been said. I think there was one of our wines, according to Outridge, that I remember, that was denied 3 times.
4 times.
Was it 4 times?
It was the Any Gorilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they kept telling us we couldn't say that we had put brandy in the wine, even though we did. It's perfectly legal, but for some reason they didn't think you could say.
Are you sure it was Any Gorilla over at Outridge? I think it was a wine at Outridge that denied us 4 times, because Monica had said they're denied 1 more time. This is like the most we've ever been denied for a TTB label.
Yeah,
because the Meritage.
Any Gorilla was 4 times, but it was at Diamond Springs.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so what does that mean in terms of timing?
Well, if you estimate the timing from a JPEG to an actually approved label, one that's been denied 4 times, you're looking at like at least 3 months of that label being rejected and changed and rejected and changed. 3 to 4 months.
It can be.
I mean, that whole time you're trying to ensure that we have these labels ready so that we can go on the pressing line. I'm sorry?
Okay, at least a month.
Yeah.
All right, so then what happens then? What's the long pole in the tent now?
After a label has been accepted from TTB,
Mm-hmm.
well, then it's going back and deciding which wines we're trying to figure out to bottle according to their readiness.
But what's going to take the most time?
Labels?
Yeah.
Right now it's labels.
Right.
Labels takes the most time to print. Within recently, the last couple of printings, labels have taken a good 2 months before they've even gotten to the bottling line, I want to say.
Yeah, because they have a strict process that they make us go through to get everything correct and then sign the proofs.
Well, it's not just the strict process, it's the fact that they're not responding to a lot of the emails that we've been sending, or phone calls that we've been calling.
Tell them, well, you've got the Cabernet Franc back label on the Tempranillo, that's not going to work. And so you go back to them, and with COVID and everything, their response time is a week or more every time we want to make a correction. So
yes.
And then once we do get on the schedule,
well, then it takes about a month to complete the schedule. Then from there, it's determining the correct amount of cases that are needed for each wine.
Well, there's another thing, which is that we have to determine a UPC code.
Yes. So that it's going to GS1, determining the UPC code, entering all the information in, getting the UPC code.
Okay, well, push all the way over to the left, like you just did. So that we only need UPC codes for new products. We will need one for the unicorn. If we start with column E there, we have to figure out whether the blend is right and whether we have to do any last minute perfections, which might include an oak chip addition or maybe an alcohol sweet spot or any kind of processing to get the wine into bottleable condition. So then this is changing, but we used to have the wine all over hell. And so you would have to figure out a way to move it.
Like Outridge or Diamond Springs, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the bottling location where we have our cola submitted to.
Right.
And then trucking.
So even if you have a cola, if it's at the wrong winery, you have to get a different one.
Mhm.
And sometimes they don't approve it, even though they already have.
Yes, because it's a different person who's looking at your application.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So, so then we get our trucking done.
Mhm. Which not all parties will truck out to Diamond Springs.
Right.
We have to locate the trucking companies that do either one, do bulk and case goods that will truck to and from Sonoma County to Diamond Springs. But if it's already there, yeah.
Or Lake County, wherever it is.
Mhm.
Then we have to coordinate with between the trucker and the sending winery and the
And the
receiving
receiving
winery,
winery. Mhm.
and get the bill of lading. So that can be a complex process. Now we schedule a bottling date. So that's not up to us. And we schedule it, we have to schedule it pretty far in advance, like a couple of months. So we'll be in the middle of this TTB label approval process
Well, we're trying to schedule a bottling date. Yeah.
while we're trying to schedule a bottling, which we may or may not be able to make the date.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have scheduled for this upcoming bottling, March 19th, right?
Correct. The week of March 16th is what Terry said. So I think we're looking at, as long as everything's arrived, it will be by March 19th, before March 19th. So I have down on my list, I believe, March 16th.
That's
Just
a
like
Friday, isn't it?
March 17th, maybe, just so that I can ensure that everything has been delivered in time. So it's Tuesday of next week. So Tuesday or next week. So the week of March 16th is when bottling is gonna actually happen.
The 16th is a Tuesday.
Yes. So for majority of the vendors, I have down delivery date March 15th.
Yeah, but if any of them don't make it, the whole thing goes down the drain.
Yes.
So we're cutting it kind of close.
Yes. We're fortunate enough that Diamond Springs is a little flexible with their bottling scheduling, but if it were Outridge, there's no way we could
Yeah, we
schedule it for later in the
lose a
week.
month.
You
Yeah.
lose your spot. There's that too, depending on the company that you're going with. Either you make it or you lose it.
Right. Okay. So now.
So now we got our cola, and we've alerted Paragon of how many labels we need, depending on how many estimated cases we're expecting for bottling.
Right.
So that's, I think, next. So after obtaining the colas, go back to Paragon, tell them, hey, we would like these 4 different varietals of 2018 Petit Verdot, 2019 Malbec, 2018 Saint Laurent, and Cab Franc.
And why do we want to print all of those labels together?
Because it's less expensive.
It's a lot less expensive. We tried to do an individual, it would be, 3 times the price.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's less expensive to do a whole lot versus one at a time. So we try to get, I think you usually been averaging 4 or 5 varietals. I mean, about 4 varietals at a time has been 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well,
The last 3 bottlings have been
1,000
varietals.
cases. There's 12 bottles, but we need to put a label on the case. So we usually use 13.5.
13.5.
In case there's a little wastage. So here we're looking at 13 or 14,000 labels, and that gets the price per case down to about $3.50, where in small lots it could be $10.
So to figure that out, what we do is we go by the gallons that we have on hand, which are estimated gallons, because these are the gallons that we had according to when we crushed the wine. So there's going to be less gallons in it since we pulled for samples.
Well, and racking off lees. So it's a high estimate because the last thing you want to do is run out and be stuck with 9 cases of shiners.
Yes. So we go by how many gallons we have in an event. And then, so we put it in our gallons. The 19 Malbec's a little bit different because we are planning on blending 20% of the Malbec into the 19 Meritage. So we have the math up here. And then we go to estimated cases for bottling, which is going to equal the gallons divided by 2.4 because there's 2.4 gallons to be bottled in a case. I think it's a number I'm never going to ever forget. It's embedded in my head.
Well, the real number is 2.389775.
Oh, that's true. Right. Okay, I'm just gonna go 2.4. That's it. More confusion. So we divide our gallons by the estimated cases per bottle, and then that's how we also determine everything going forward. So dividing the gallons per the 2.4 gallons per cases, that's going to configure our corks. It's going to configure our capsules and our labels as well, and bottles.
Well, how do we pick out our bottles?
We go by whatever company Sandra decides is probably going to be best due to their customer service and their prices.
Why don't you tell some war stories about all
afternoon for this? Come on.
Low pack and
okay, so horror stories. There's one company that has just given us and Diamond Bridge an extremely hard time and made us pay a lot of money for restocking bottles, even though that was a mess.
Well, they shipped them
they shipped them when we did not confirm shipment. So that's the big thing with these vendors, is that they will ship items even if it wasn't confirmed, saying yes, this is this, this is this. And that was before, when everyone was on terms. So during the pandemic, a lot of these vendors are not on terms anymore, so they're not shipping until we pay.
Right. Which slows things down.
Which slows these down, but it also confirms, like, yes, this is what we want. And it's just that extra confirmation that I think is needed, but also a little more reassuring, because we had a lot of vendors before where it was a 30-day term. So we'd order the product, wouldn't have to pay for 30 days, or 60-day terms, or 90-day terms, depending on the vendor. So we had these accounts set up. And so when you would say, like, hey, we have bottling on the 20th of March, can you deliver by the 17th at the latest? So
then there's the vendors that, we have to pick these bottles out and try to get something that's close, because they're all different. Try to get something that's close and reasonably priced and all that. And our bottles are not very goofy. Well, sometimes they are, but the standard reverse tapered claret, and we got all set to send some of that out, and then they said, well, we don't have any.
Okay, yes, but you're jumping ahead. So the first horror story was with All American, where we didn't confirm delivery, and then they delivered.
That's not their only sin.
Yes, not their only sin.
They're very unresponsive. It can take weeks for them to get back to you with a quote.
Mm-hmm.
Or even just your phone call.
If you're speaking about our last bottling, just because it always seems like something goes wrong with bottling, whether its labels aren't printed on time, or the bottles aren't delivered till last minute, or corks have gone missing because they were delivered to somebody else's pallet by mistake, but going to the same facility. These are all things that have happened. And especially the last, 3 years? I think it's my 3rd year bottling with Winesmith, and it's everything that can go wrong has possibly gone wrong.
Yeah.
So now when a vendor calls and says, like, hey, I know we meant to send this, but we don't have it, I'm really not surprised anymore, because they're just non-reliant. And sometimes it's not the vendor's fault, because from what I've learned talking to different vendors, especially with bottling, a lot of their bottles are coming from China, overseas. And so inventory is just messed up, or inventory might not have been completed for the past month. So the most recent that Clark was speaking about was, we were going through one company that hasn't really been too bad with us. Customer service has been pretty good. This last bottling, we had everything set up. Everything was paid for. I get a call Monday before the week before bottling, after we paid everything and set everything up for shipping, that there was some sort of discrepancy with inventory. And instead of having the 400 and what was it, like 60 something cases that we had wanted, they only had like 219.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So service and integrity are so important with glass suppliers. And
Yes.
we've got one now that we think is going to work out. People say very good things about M&A Silva.
Mhm.
Certainly the responsiveness has been great so far. I really don't mind paying just a little bit more for reliability.
No, I agree. I super agree. So we ended up having to go on their website and find a different alternative for the bottle that we were looking for.
Let's talk about foils.
Oh, foils have been my nemesis for this modeling anyway. Usually it's bottles that are my nemesis, but foils have been my nemesis for this modeling. All right, foils. What do you want to know about foils?
Well,
how difficult it is to keep the inventory of foils?
Yeah, we have several different colors, but the color is not the only consideration. Foils are pretty inexpensive, somewhere around 5 or 6 cents a piece for the ones we use.
But foils also change colors per different vendor every year. And so sometimes your colors are a little off or their name changes, just like the bottles do.
What's the other tricky part about foils?
Trying to keep the inventory correct where our inventory is at.
No, you're leaving something out.
Also trying to ensure that the size of the foil fits the bottle that we're bottling.
Right, which is not easy.
No, I messed it up last time.
We can have, 3 different sizes of gold foils. And so the inventory is very tricky to keep track of. Plus they're hard to
oh, let me get that right now. There it is. So I have glasses needed, cases, costs, but foil inventory. So that's inventory on hand and trying to figure out one.
You take what we have on hand and what we need, and the difference is something we have to order. Now the foils usually come 3,000 to 5,000 per box, and so
anywhere in between, yeah.
Yeah.
So right here on the screen is our capsules inventory. So it's the different kind of capsules here. The supplier, their diameter. So there's 28 5s, there's 32s, there's 28 7s, which are very important because we can't shove a 28 7 on a bottle head that's 32. And then we have the location of where they're at, inventory with notes. So we may have had 2,800 in inventory, or the Burgundy right now, which has been my nemesis for the past week, is trying to figure out how many Burgundy capsules we have in storage and where they're at. But the inventory is missing. So it's a matter of hunting it down. Was it still at Granite Springs? Was it shipped with the bottles that were shipped back to us? And it's just trying to keep a very detailed note about what's going on. So I know now that these Burgundy capsules
I think we're gonna bore the shit out of these people. But I'm trying to do my job as a winemaker and ensure that the wine that we're putting in the bottle is the best that it can be. And if I had to tear my hair out about all this stuff that Sandra's taking care of, I would never be able to do my job.
Yeah, so Sandra gets to lose sleep overnight about what's going on, and if people are going to call back tomorrow, and do I have these capsules in stock, and so I have to go and try to hunt them down, or I have to call the winery 5 times this week to ensure that they have them. Corks are pretty easy. I have to admit, corks are probably one of the easiest inventory items needed. We are very fortunate in that Lafitte that we use for our corks and sometimes our capsules, they provide extremely good customer service. They're really on top of things. They deliver before your bottling date. So I
Very
know,
low
I know that.
incidence of corky taint. I actually set up their quality control about 30
Mhm.
years ago. They do everything stored very low moisture to keep mold from growing, and then they humidify in an ozonated room, and it takes 5 days. So that's the only thing, is you just gotta think ahead. So if
2
we're gonna
days.
bottle next Tuesday, those corks need to already be in the humidifier, because then we gotta pay for them, and then we gotta ship them.
For this bottling, I feel very confident that everything is going to arrive on time. And I feel like, especially now, we have a good support of vendors who are used to everything going wrong from their clients, and they try best to not make it happen. I mean, there's so many cork and capsule and bottle horror stories that I have in the past 3 years of trying to bottle with Winesmith. And I'm very pleased that I think now we have a really good support system with that.
Yeah, I feel really good about it. And you, of course, are the linchpin in the whole thing.
It's taken many nights of sleepless nights and tears calling these vendors saying, like, where is this? But
Yeah.
some vendors have like driven down the morning before bottling in order to deliver things that were skipped on their part of shipping. So a lot of the vendors are very customer service friendly. Even when I called Nate from Lafitte today, he just picked up and said, "Hey, Sandra." So they already know that I'm calling. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Well, and finally, I want to do a shout out to the harvest partners, because we're hitting, as we do every year, we're hitting this crunch time when we're trying to put a lot of glass around a lot of wine. Cash runs thin, and the partners have stepped up to get their investments in a little bit early, so that we can make this thing happen next week. And I'm really grateful for everybody's cooperation.
Well, again, if it wasn't for the harvest partners, we wouldn't be able to branch out a little bit more and create these different varietals that we've been having our eyes on, like the Tempranillo and the Tannat, and those different varietals that are really good.
All right, well, why don't we wrap this thing up?
It's been great.
Looks like everything is well in hand. And just work with Ruthie on the Lafitte payment.
Okay. All right.
Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks. Bye.